The Orient Bambino is sometimes described as being the best value dress watch from a major brand, and it is easy to see why people love this thing. Bambinos are known for being inexpensive, reliable, and of course, pretty. And this one definitely checks all those boxes. But there are a couple things about this watch which I did not expect. This is the Orient Bambino model number FAC00009N0. At the time of this video, you can find this watch on Amazon for $183 US, or head on over to the Orient website and pay $195. Hey everyone, welcome back to Eric's Everyday Watches. As always, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. The first thing that grabs your attention about this watch is the way it looks, with that retro styling, that old-timer appearance. You know, someone said to me once that most Bambinos look like a grandpa watch, and I agree in the best way possible. I wish my grandpa had owned this watch and passed it down to me, because it is absolutely stunning. Now the case construction on this is stainless steel, with a diameter coming in at what I thought was my sweet spot of 40.5 millimeters, not including the crown. On the side, for a lug-to-lug distance, we have 46.5 millimeters. And for an overall thickness, including the dome crystal, comes in at a mere 11.5 millimeters. Now I gotta say, when you look at just the case, it appears unbelievably thin for an automatic watch. It looks like half of that 11.5 millimeter thickness is actually the crystal itself. Now, another thing I've heard about this watch is that it is too big for a dress watch. That it actually fits fine, but it just looks bigger than it should for this style of watch. And my take on it is that normally I consider my sweet spot between 40 and 42 millimeters. So I completely expected this to fit, and it does. But at the same time, I actually have to admit that the bezel being so thin and this having such a generous sized dial, that I'm actually wondering what a 38 millimeter would look like on me. Keep in mind, I am not a fan of small watches, but this watch has reminded me that it's not always about the dimensions. The overall proportions are such a key factor in determining how a watch looks and wears. There is a high polished finish on top of the case, and the bezel slopes downward from the crystal, helping to give that thin appearance. On the top of the lugs, we also have a high polished finish, as we do on the side of the crown. From the side of the case, we see a nicely done brushed finish, which offers a bit of contrast to that high polish and adds a bit of elegance in my opinion. The lugs themselves have a nice downturn to them, although with a lug-to-lug distance of 46.5, this would have fit just fine even if it did not. There is a small bump out on the side of the case, which aligns perfectly with the height of the lugs. So one complaint I hear brought up a lot about this watch is the 21 millimeter lug width. And yeah, I agree. You probably have a series of 20 millimeter strap already in your collection. I know I do. And it would have been nice if one of those had fit here. Now, some of the newer Bambinos do come with 20 millimeter lug width, but unfortunately not this one. Moving on to the back of the watch, there is rather surprisingly a screw down case back. Now, given that this only has 30 meters of water resistance and that it's a dress watch, I did not expect a screw down case back. Interesting to note, the amount of water resistance is not called out on the case back. It simply says water resistant. They skipped right over that 30 meter part. The other text on the case back reads stainless steel, movement Japan, and Orient automatic. And inside that case, we have Orient's in-house F6724 automatic movement, and that has 22 joules, beats at 21,600 beats per hour, comes with a 40-hour power reserve. It does hand wind and it does hack. Now the crown at the 3 o'clock position is unsigned. It is approximately 6.5 millimeters in width and 4 millimeters in depth. It is not an overly large crown, but it does command attention on this watch. Now this is a simple push-pull crown, meaning to hand wind all you have to do is rotate it in its normal position, pulling it out to one position adjusts the date, and pulling it out to the second position hacks the second hand and sets the time. Now let's move on to the showstopper, and I'm talking about the face of the watch. It is such a top-notch, beautiful looking watch. On the outside, we have a simple minute track starting at the base of the design. And on the inside of that, we have a secondary minute track, but this time it includes Arabic numbers on the 5-minute intervals. This is also where we get some depth entering into the design, with the dial appearing to have a domed aspect to it. And further in from that, we have those applied metallic Roman numerals around the dial, except at the 3 o'clock position, which makes room for that date window. At the 12 o'clock position, we have the Orient logo as well as the word automatic done in a script font. Down below at the 6 o'clock position, we find the words water resistant, also in a script font. Now the date window is unadorned and kept simple, with the date being shown black on white. And while it's not the easiest to read, it was legible. All of the dial is kept rather simplistic, if not monochromatic in color scheme, which allows the hands to be the wow factor here. The blue colored hands appear to change color from black to blue depending on how the light hits it, and in my opinion, elevates the appearance of this watch to another level. The second hand nicely extends all the way to the minute track, as does the minute hand, making an easy task to set the time accurately. Now the dial here is an off-white or a light cream color with a slight sunburst effect to it. I feel like Orient went all out on this design, making it as attractive as possible. Now the one thing you won't find here is any lume. This is straight up a dress watch, and it is not pretending to be anything other than that. And that brings me to another part I want to bring up about this watch. Now the same person who told me that this might be the best valued automatic watch from a major brand also said, I'm not sure I'm looking for the best value automatic watch from a major brand. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that this is a dress watch, a traditional dress watch. Yeah, it's beautiful, it's impressive, it's a great price. The question is, how often do you think you'll pull out a dress watch like this and actually wear it? Now before COVID, when I worked in an office 5 days a week, my answer would have been very different than it is now. My concern is after the newness and the initial infatuation wears down, will it see a lot of wrist time? You know, who knows, maybe I'll become that guy. You know, the one wearing shorts and flip-flops, walking a dog, wearing a dress watch. Please, don't judge me. You know, there are no hard rules here, I guess. Moving on, the crystal that comes with this watch is a domed piece of mineral crystal, and for around $150, that's to be expected. Now the domed crystal is one of the parts that makes this watch look like such a stunner. It really has that old school look to it. And if I had to choose between this domed mineral crystal or a flat sapphire, I would choose this one all day long. Now the strap that comes with this watch is 21 millimeters at the lugs and tapers down to 20 millimeters at the buckle. The underside is nice and soft and stamped with the words genuine leather. Now the top side is a dark reddish brown color and it is shiny, to say the least. Overall, the strap feels stiff and leaves a lot to be desired. I've heard a lot of people complain online about this strap, and that is for good reason. Now the strap does come with 10 adjustment holes, and on my 7-inch wrist, there are 7 extra adjustment holes for anyone with a larger wrist. There are also 2 leather keepers, the first one of which is not movable. And with this strap being so stiff, it is a challenge to bend the strap enough to get it under that first keeper. As I mentioned before, this is, unfortunately a 21 millimeter strap. And those are not impossible to find, but chances are you don't already own one. The buckle is signed with the Orient logo and has a high polished finish, like the top of the case. I think it goes without saying that I would have preferred to see a standard 20mm strap on this watch. And I think everybody on the internet would have preferred that too. So let's go over the specs for this watch. We have a domed mineral crystal, Orient's automatic F6724 movement, a diameter of 40.5 millimeters, thickness of 11.5 millimeters, a lug width of 21 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug distance of 46.5 millimeters. And finally, let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons. For pros, it is a very good looking watch. It's very legible, it has a good fit and finish, and the movement does hack and hand wind. Now for cons, that strap is really stiff, and there is a 21 millimeter lug width. And lastly, you have to admit, it is a very formal looking watch, which means you're either going to use it for dress occasions or you're going to be that guy. So my final thoughts on this watch. This is super impressive for the money, and I would definitely check out the newer 38mm version with the 20mm lugs. And I would consider how often you wore a dress watch this year, or if you're willing to be that guy. This has been Eric from Eric's Everyday Watches, reminding you to buy the watch that you love, and don't pay any attention to what anybody else says or thinks. This is your watch collection. If you like this video, if you find it helpful in any way, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.